Stacy Lewis with her opinions, which Dom was a strong one, which is to say she's our top player. She's the number one player in the world. She may not want to do it. It may not be her personality, as she admitted, but she has an obligation to it and to help the LPGA. So I don't know which side the perspective is. My guess is, like most things, it's somewhere in the middle there. But I do believe that there's a culture amongst top players right now. And I'm not talking about just LPGA. I'm talking about golf. There's a culture amongst top players where they build up walls. I think Jon Rahm did it when he announced he was going to live, and then said, I'm not going to talk until my press conference in February. And he just peace out. He was gone for months, where everyone's hanging saying, what's going on? So, and again, if a player wants to do that, okay, I agree. I'll admit you have a right to do that. But my issue is if you take that position and then later on turn around and come back and be like, hey, I love you guys. I just want to thank you guys for being such great fans. And I think that's disrespectful to the fans, to the 99.99% again. You couldn't do what you're doing without them, and I think you have to pay them respect. Take the time. And maybe do it in different forums like we were just talking about. That's okay. But have a way, find a way that you stay connected to, because I think you owe it to them. What was it, Tom? Remind us again what your question of the day was. You didn't give us any of the results on the national TV broadcast, but could you tell us what's going on now?
Well, I did that on purpose.
I know you did it on purpose.
That was a bad decision. Was that a bad decision?
No. I think you'd probably you'll criticize me later on for keeping the show on the air for the first time and not ending it. But I'm glad we did it. I'm glad that we exercised.
There's too much to unpack. It's not fair to the storylines.
If we had just let it collapse at the natural, yeah, I agree with that.
So the question of the day, is: does Nelly Korda have a responsibility to do what she can to elevate the PGA Tour? Thanks to John Burkett, by the way, for cutting up this sound.
Our man.
And in the way that he did. And this question is partially coming from him based on what we're discussing here. My three options for that: is it her responsibility? Definitely, it's her responsibility.
Yep.
No, it's not her problem. Or, listen, this is an LPGA problem. It's a holistic issue. It's not one person's issue. And it's quite split. Right now, 42% say definitely her problem. 18% say not her problem. 40%, Matt, are saying this is an LPGA problem. That is a really interesting.
Yeah, because I totally disagree. I don't even know what that means. It's an LPGA problem. The same thing exists on every tour.
No, I don't agree with that. I disagree with that completely.
Come on.
The LPGA Tour, in relative terms to how good the quality of golf is, is nowhere near the elevation it should be. The PGA Tour is, right?
All right. Well, now you're giving me a context that I didn't have with that. I thought this whole thing was, if you're a top player, you owe it to the fans, you owe it to your tour to get yourself out there and let the people hear from you, and not benefit from all of the money and the fame and everything that goes along with this position that your great play has provided, but you're not giving enough back to the people without whom you wouldn't have any of it. That's the way I view it. Maybe I'm misinterpreting the question.
No, I don't think you are. What I meant by, I'm sorry if this is somehow confusing, I didn't think that it was, is I'm saying, my question is it Nelly Korda's responsibility to elevate the tour because of all the things you're talking about? Because she's the number one player, because she's the face of the tour, etc. Or is it the LPGA's responsibility to elevate itself, to do everything it can and all this other stuff?
I mean, I still don't see the connection there with that thing, because what I'm talking about is what we're discussing here. We're using Nelly because Nelly and Stacy had this open dialogue in two different, I say an open dialogue because it was two different press conferences where they expressed a completely different perspective. One was Nelly going, look, I'm Nelly. I am who I am. I do what's comfortable for me, and it's working from a competitive standpoint, and I hope that it's causing greater interest. Whereas Stacy Lewis is like, no, you know what? You're the top dog. You're number one. You owe more. It's a responsibility that you have to everybody, right? But that's not unique to the LPGA. Look at the template of modern players right now on the PGA Tour and the manner in which they conduct. I told you, the sentries at the gate, the bouncers at the door of entry are their agents. Not an easy job. They've got a tough job. And the common refrain from media is no. Go ahead, Dom. You're talking to me in the background about interaction with.
I mean, are you
he has more
comfortable doing
interaction
that?
with agents than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I was not planning on talking about this on the air, and it's a little uncomfortable because I'm not sure. Sometimes there's extenuating circumstances, and sometimes it's fair and warranted. But most of the time, I've been doing this for 16 years. When I say most of the time, I'm probably talking about 85 to 90% of the time that I contact an agent to interview a player, I get the answer no. And very rarely do I get a reason, an actual real reason. And I do understand that sometimes things come up, and I'm sure that 10% of that 90%, it's reasonable to say no. And I really don't want it to come across as though I'm talking from my ego, because it's not like I think we deserve to talk to this player or that player, or that we've even earned it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is a little bit along the lines of what you're saying and what Stacy Lewis is saying is, when you are a professional athlete, part of your job, it's not just a responsibility, because responsibility falls underneath your job. They're sort of one and the same. When your job is professional athlete, part of your job is to talk to the media. Full stop. No, there's nothing else to discuss. And now I'm not saying you got to promote this, you got to promote that, this brand, that brand, money. I'm not talking about any of that. If you're a professional athlete, part of your job is talking to the media. Now, if you look at a lot of the major leagues in the world, the NFL, the NBA, soccer, it's a little different, Matt. I understand, because it's on the LPGA and the PGA Tour, you're talking about independent contractors. They didn't sign a job agreement with the tour. And in the case of the NFL, the NBA, or some of the other things, it's in the contract. They're an employee, but they must do media. It's literally in the contract. You have to do media. When the game ends, you got to talk to the press. That's part of the job, good or bad or indifferent. And if you talk about Nelly Korda specifically, this would be my take, Matt. My almost like, this is what I think, Matt. What do you think about this? First of all, I will say we have requested Nelly Korda on the show, which I'm sure is not surprising, and we were turned down, which again, coming from my perspective, is unsurprising. It's very common for me to get that response. But my take, and I think Tiger was like this, I don't think Tiger was great with the media. I still don't think he's that great with the media.
Well, I don't think he's comfortable.
I don't think he's a media guy. He's not comfortable. Yeah. But guess what? It's your job. Got to do it. Tiger's been in front of the media for 20 years, answering questions he doesn't want to answer. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes we talk about it on the show. Sometimes we don't. It's the way it is.
Well, he's
That's how
brilliant
it
at
is.
not answering particularly back in the
Well,
day.
that's
He's better at
20
it.
years of media training.
He's much more revealing
but
now, yeah.
my final comment, which I would pose to you, is I think Nelly Korda has a responsibility to do media, even if she's uncomfortable with doing it. And I'm not saying, hey, Nelly, come on this show. I don't care what show you come on. I just think that you have a responsibility to do shows and not press conferences, shows. Like you were talking about earlier, Barstool, No Lane Up, all this other stuff. That's how we get the personality. Think about what we did an hour ago with David Abelese. You, meaning the audience, you don't get to see a person in that position interact in that manner.
You know what? That's
Anywhere,
a good point.
ever.
There's a good point that you bring up, Don, because I want to mention this too. We're talking about athletes. David was very revealing for us, and I think it was important for us to hear from the voice of another leader in another element of the game. There are plenty of top-tier executives that won't do that, what he just did. Same thing. Better to hide behind the shadows and do what they do instead of being out in front and hearing from people that are bringing their message to the masses. And to your comment about, booking players on shows, just to provide this from a relativity standpoint, this show is the largest golf talk show in the world. There is no other independent golf talk show that's broadcast from coast to coast every day on Golf Channel. Doesn't exist. There is no other show that is available not only there, but live around the world for free through this YouTube vehicle, which is our smallest vehicle of distribution, incidentally. And then we're syndicated over the weekend in an independent affiliate network from coast to coast in a television broadcast, which means that we're reaching a minimum of 180 million homes. 180 million. There's nobody else that even comes close to that. And when you consider all that, and then Dom's going to an agent and saying, hey, our job is to get your person out in front. And we always tell them the same thing. And you guys already know this. If you come on the show with us, you're a professional player, and you come on the show with us, we're going to ask you who your sponsors are. So that's our way of saying thank you for taking the time. Pay them off. Tell the world who you're associated with, right? Now, whether that message connects with agents or not, I don't know. I have no idea. Are they afraid
part
that...
of it is money, Matt.
But I was going to say, are they afraid that we're going to ask the questions that have to be asked? Because the one thing I won't do, the one thing I refuse to do is when we have an interview set up with somebody big and they go, yeah, happy to have them come on, but don't ask about, or we don't want to talk about, fill in the blank here. We don't do that. To hell with that. Don't come on. Rather not have you on than to have some prearranged subterfuge where we can't discuss something that needs to be asked and something that needs to be discussed. Won't do it. But I don't think that's the reason that you're getting... No, the reason I'm saying all that to you is so that you understand that it's not a question of, well, you can get them if the platform is big enough. It's not what it is. It's a philosophy that we're talking about in terms of access. So now I go back to my question. Having said all that, again, I'm going to give it to you from both sides. You know what our perspective is. However, if a player actually performs better by not being out there as much, like Rory took a step back, even though Rory still makes himself available, he's a really hard example to use. But if it's better for a player in their performance, and ultimately they're going to be judged by their performance in the future, no one's going to look back and go, yeah, but they made themselves available to the media. No, it's about wins and losses.
No,
it's sport.
Wait a second. Wait a second. I don't agree with that.
Go ahead.
The growth of the sport potentially, especially if you're talking about the LPGA, could easily you could draw a direct line to that access. So you're saying, well, how is history going to look at Nelly in 100 years? Well, if Nelly opens up and becomes an absolute Caitlin Clark rock star and grows the LPGA Tour to new heights, then history will view her very differently. And maybe you pick the LPGA player in 10 years is going to be playing for twice the amount of money because
Maybe,
of
Dom.
that
Maybe. Now
exposure
you're
level.
talking more altruistic there, and I get that. But if she's a one-time major champion and a 12-time winner on the LPGA in 50 or 100 years, she's an asterisk. She's hardly discussed. Because the winners on the LPGA, we're talking about some double-digit major champions and massive number of wins. What I'm saying is if a player performs better by staying in their cocoon, are their actions justified because of what it means for them? What are you hearing back on the discussion board? I'm curious about where people fall on that. Is there a responsibility at large, or first and foremost, do you say, you know what, this is what works for me, and what works for me leads to the legacy stuff? The stuff that's connected with your name directly, not with what you did to build the game or build the tour or all the rest. For better or for worse. What are they saying?
A lot. First of all, the poll is that 41% are saying definitely Nelly Korda. 41% are saying definitely it's the LPGA, with the remainder saying it's not her problem.
See, I'm starting to wonder now if that 82%, 83%, whatever the math is, if it's not saying the exact same thing. Of course the league has a responsibility to build itself. Does she have a responsibility to be a part of that?
Paul says, this is great. No other podcast like this. Thank you, Paul. Nelly was on 4Golf, and it got huge views, Dean writes. Pursue her. If you do a good product as media, she will do it.
Good.
Okay. We need to grow this channel more. Okay. Yeah, cool. That'd be nice. Oh, this is interesting. Here's an interesting question. Doesn't Nelly need to be more guarded than ever because of the risks of social media? That's fair.
That's absolutely, that's why I love our audience. That is absolutely
That's very
brilliant.
fair.
Does that change
That could
the
be
whole
part
discussion?
of the reason why. She's probably like, I don't need this crap. The alternative side, which is not talking about there, that was G. Willis who asked that question. The alternative that he's not talking about is the opposite, which is if she wants to talk to people, she could just do it on her own social media.
Right, that's okay. I remember Tiger doing a couple. He fired a couple shots across the bow of media, doing press conferences through his website. That was a number of years ago.
David says if you're winning, you have a responsibility. Nelly's winning.
Dom's cruising through our discussion board. That's what it was going on. There was
there's just so much stuff there. I mean, there's a lot
the social
coming
media
in.
is a really interesting component to throw in there and go, does exposure on social media count in this regard? If someone makes themselves available in some way, like it was just last week because the LPGA was off the week of the Masters. Nelly Korda put stuff out there. There were actually pictures of her on a beach. In a bikini on a beach. She's an athlete. Right? She chose to do that. She put that out there. Okay, well, that kind of gives us that personality side of Nelly Korda. The last press conference we aired from her on this show, the last comment she made when she was like, well, I don't drink, so I'm carb loading, which I thought was really funny. When she was talking about going out with her friends, it was great to see that personality. Now, whether that's directly related to what we're talking about, which is responsibilities relative to addressing the media, it's another matter entirely. Or is it? Just interesting stuff. Very, very, very interesting stuff. I won't go deeper than that in here, so because I think we've really kind of fleshed that one out. Well, if we do that, that's code from Dom saying you've gone on long enough today. Let's wrap this show up. So we do that,
I don't really care, but we've got a lot of other things to do.
You got to pick your kids up at school at 3:30 and all the rest.
Yeah, we can't do this all day.
Which is it's fun. The irony is this is pretty much what we do.
To the point we're talking about with the LPGA and the exposure. They're doing featured group coverage on ESPN Plus this week of their major championship. Andrew, put the tee times up for the women.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
wait a
you
minute.
put that up,
He's
too.
give
That's the
him a
airtime.
second. Give him a second. You just mentioned.
Just do everything I say all at once. Do it.
Yeah, featured group coverage for the Chevron Championship Thursday and Friday starting at 9 a.m. all the way up until 8 p.m. will be on ESPN Plus. Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. again on ESPN Plus. Now, if we put up the Chevron Championship featured groups, do you guys have in this, Dom? Is there? So I know you had an asterisk on the men's
It
side.
hasn't been announced yet.
Is that
but
what it is?
I can
Okay.
tell you that 110 with Nelly Korda, Minji Lee, and Lilia Vu will most certainly be a feature group. I would also anticipate that
821.
Lexi Thompson, Brooke Henderson, and Lydia
Yeah,
Ko
exactly. That's gonna
would also
you
be
know
a
that one's
featured
gonna
group.
be. So we
Now,
probably got two of them
You could
already
kind of
nailed.
handpick any. Yeah, you could handpick any of them from that. I mean, there's some serious groups going there.
1248
Ronan
looks
Yin, Celine Boudier,
compelling.
Allison Corpuz. I think they're all in the top 10.
Right.
So, I mean, that's cool. So they're getting that exposure. I can tell you right now, Matt, for me personally, I know I'm a golf guy, but still, at 1:10 p.m., Nelly Korda, Minji Lee, and Lilia Vu, you're crazy if you don't think I'm watching feature group coverage of that group. I'm all over that.
Yeah. All kicking off tomorrow. So let's go through it since Don brought it up. Let's, if you wouldn't mind, Andrew, bring back the ESPN Plus featured group coverage of the Chevron Championship. Just to reiterate that, starting tomorrow at 9 a.m., all these times are Eastern, on Thursday and Friday at 9 a.m., Saturday and Sunday at 8 a.m. are the times for the featured group coverage. The Chevron Championship television coverage starts Thursday and Friday at 10 a.m., goes up to 2 p.m., breaks on Golf Channel at 2 p.m. for the PGA Tour, comes back at 6 p.m., goes all the way up to 8 p.m. Anytime I see air times, it brings golf into prime time, all in. Absolutely love it. Saturday and Sunday, start time at 3 p.m. on NBC. Again, all Eastern.